Hello everyone, how are you today? Welcome back to another video from the world of EnglishExams.com. In this video, as you can clearly see, we are going to discuss about the types of sentences which are very important if you wish to score 7 or higher in your IELTS reading as well as speaking. So we'll take the writing module as the base and I'll teach you how to write various sentences. That is, we are going to cover concepts like coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, Oxford comma, and yes, many other useful concepts would be covered in a single video. So do stay tuned till the end to know all the grammar concepts pertaining to the types of sentences, and I'll try to make the concepts as easy as possible. So let's check out the video. Yes. So as you can see, the grammatical range and accuracy, which is also called GRA in the short form, is a compulsory component which constitutes to about 25% of the overall score in both the writing and speaking modules. Yes. So let's say that you get a score of 7 overall. In that, 25% of the score is because of your grammar. So since it plays a vital role, it is very essential for us to understand this criteria very importantly. Now, before we proceed further, let me tell you that we are starting a series of videos in which I'm going to explain concepts like punctuations, and this video covers types of sentences, and we are going to provide you a basic overview of the various question types and the format of the writing module as well. So do stay tuned to our channel www.worldofenglishexams to know the latest updates, as well as if you wish to receive all the notifications, just ring the bell icon and we are sure to do that. Right, so now let's continue to understanding the various types of sentences. There are basically 4 types of sentences in English. The first one is known as simple sentence. The second one is known as a compound sentence. The third is a complex sentence, and the fourth is a compound complex sentence. So simple, compound, complex and compound complex are the 4 types of sentences in the English language. We are going to study about all of these sentences, and I'm going to also give you many interesting shortcuts to remember the conjunctions. So do stay tuned till the end of the video. Fine. So firstly, let's know about the simple sentences. So simple sentences, as the name suggests, are those sentences that have a simple meaning. Okay, so they just have what is known as an independent clause. So independent means that they are not dependent on any other part of the sentence and they can exist on their own. That means they have a wholesome meaning on their own and they don't need the external help for it to be completed. So that means they do not require any dependent clauses. Yes. So these sentences are very meaningful, and of course they do contain a subject, that is the doer of the action. The person who is doing the action is known as a subject, and the action itself is called a verb, and of course it may or may not contain an object. Now let's look at some simple examples of these sentences. Some people believe that smoking is detrimental to health. So in this sentence, we can clearly see that the word people refers to the subject, and what is the verb? The verb is believe. So definitely the sentences are meaningful on their own. As you can see, this sentence has a wholesome meaning, a complete meaning. I did not need to add any other sentence to make it complete, right? So such sentences which can exist independently are called simple sentences, and these clauses are called independent clauses. Now let's look at one more example for the simple sentences. Many governments have banned smoking in public places. Again, as you can see here, the word government is the body that is performing the action, hence this is the subject of the sentence. Then banned, yes, it is the verb, the third form of it, and then smoking is the object. And of course public places are also referred to as objects. So a sentence that follows the basic formula, that is subject plus verb plus object, is referred to as a simple sentence. Now, having understood what is the meaning of an independent clause and a simple sentence, let's proceed forward to understanding what are compound sentences. So, a compound sentence is the one that is formed by joining two simple sentences or more than two simple sentences together. In simple, we can say that a compound sentence is formed by using conjunctions that link two simple sentences together. So, simple sentence number 1 plus simple sentence number 2 is equal to a compound sentence. It is as simple as that. So, but in order to join these sentences, we would require what are called coordinating conjunctions. I repeat once again, in order to join two simple sentences together to form a compound sentence, we need what are called coordinating conjunctions. Guys, this concept is very important, and the appropriate use of coordinating conjunctions will definitely have credit. So definitely you will get credit if you use the coordinating conjunctions appropriately, not only in the writing but also in the speaking module of the IELTS. Now let's look at one easy way to remember the coordinating conjunctions. So are you ready to learn the trick? Yes. So here goes the trick. It's known as fanboys. FANBOYS. So these 7 alphabets would constitute 7 coordinating conjunctions, and it is the easiest and the most simplest way to remember the coordinating conjunctions. I repeat, FANBOYS, and here I have clearly categorized what each of them means. Let's look at that. So F stands for. So for means it's a reason. Then A stands for and. So generally students will keep repeating the same coordinating conjunctions such as and or maybe but and or. So these are the 3 coordinating conjunctions that students often use. They do not use the rest of them, mostly because they are not aware of it, and this session is definitely helpful for those who wish to know about the other fanboys. So the for and N stands for nor. So this is used in conjunction with neither generally, so which indicates it's none of the choices. So we are given 2 options, but we are opting for none of them. Okay, then B stands for but. As you know, it's used to show a contrast. Then O stands for or. It goes along with either or. So that's how it is used. And these are called correlative conjunctions, by the way. So, and it is used to show choices. Then Y stands for yet. That means the action is not finished. It is still unfinished so far, or maybe till now. And S indicates so. That indicates a consequence or a reason. So let me repeat it once again. Fanboys are the best method to learn coordinating conjunctions, which stands for and nor, but or yet so. Once again, for and nor, but or yet so. So these are the 7 words that are used as coordinating conjunctions in order to join 2 sentences and form a compound sentence. Now, having understood this, let's understand when to insert a comma and when not to insert a comma in a compound sentence. This is the place where many students go wrong, and of course their score would dramatically drop, sometimes to a 6 or even 5.5 if they are not using these commas appropriately. So punctuations are very important, and yes, here I am going to tell you an important and easiest way to know, to judge for yourself when to use a comma and when not to, when to avoid using a comma. So the first statement says, do not use a comma when conjunctions are used within a sentence. So when it is within a sentence, there is no need to separate 2 things, right? And hence we do not insert a comma. For instance, is it a boy or a girl? So in this sentence, even though or is a coordinating conjunction, we do not use a comma before it because it's a part of one sentence. Similarly, the second example, they invited my mom and dad for the party. So here, make sure you don't insert a comma before and, because here or and are used within a sentence. So in such cases, you are not supposed to be inserting a comma. Now, when to use a comma? So use a comma when the conjunction is used to join two independent clauses. So when two simple sentences are joined with one of the fanboys, only then we need to insert a comma. Now let's look at the example, and this kind of examples are very important for our IELTS writing. Smoking is harmful to health, comma, and some governments have banned smoking in public. Now in this sentence, if you see the first phrase, that is smoking is harmful to health. This is one complete sentence, isn't it? Now let's look at the second complete sentence. Some governments have banned smoking in public. Even this sentence is complete. Now what we are intending to do here, we are intending to combine both these ideas into one compound sentence. So this and is a coordinating conjunction that is used to join both these ideas, isn't it? Hence we are using a comma before and. I hope this explanation serves the purpose in explaining to you when to use a comma and when not to use a comma. Understanding this is very important. And yes, now I'm also going to talk about an important concept called Oxford comma. Yes, Oxford comma. It is an optional comma. That means it's not mandatory to use the comma. But if at all we want to use, we wish to use, we can use it. And it is an optional comma that comes before the word and at the end of a list. So just before this slide, I have told you that whenever the coordinating conjunction is joining two sentences, I need to insert a comma before that. In this case, before and we have inserted a comma, isn't it? So just like that, when you are listing items one after the other, so you can add a comma before the last item on the list, and that comma is called an Oxford comma. Sometimes it's also called as a series comma or a serial comma or a Harvard comma, because it is used majorly by the Oxford University Press people. That's the reason it's known as the Oxford comma. Strange, but yes, that's the reason. So for example, I visited France, Germany and China. So here I am listing the three countries that I have visited. Now before the last item or the last country in this case, I am inserting a comma before and. Can you see the arrow mark that targets and I have highlighted the comma in yellow, and this comma which is inserted before the last noun on the list is known as an Oxford comma. So you may or may not use it, but if at all you use it, you need to use it appropriately, and this is the appropriate use of Oxford comma. Definitely it is an advanced grammar concept, guys. So if at all you feel the necessity of using it, so do go ahead and use it. I hope compound sentences are clear by now. Now let's move on to learning about complex sentences. The third type of sentences are called complex sentences. As the name suggests, complex means something which is difficult, something which is not very easy, something which is not very typical. So here, let me explain the concept in three sentences. Let me not drag the concept further. The first sentence is that complex sentences can be defined as those sentences that contain one or more dependent clauses along with an independent clause. So the formula is very simple. Dependent clause plus independent clause. That is a complex sentence. I repeat, one independent clause plus one dependent clause is equal to one complex sentence. And similarly, just like how we had the coordinating conjunctions or the fanboys to join compound sentences, here to make a complex sentence we require what are called subordinating conjunctions. I repeat, we require subordinating conjunctions to join the dependent and independent clauses together. And yes, complex sentences are an essential part of grammar, and the evaluators on the IELTS exam are looking for complex sentences. So whether the candidate has appropriately written and used the complex sentences to justify the relevant information or not is what they would check. So now, just like I have given you a shortcut of fanboys to remember coordinating conjunctions, I would also give you a very easy way to remember subordinating conjunctions, a majority of them. So if you know these subordinating conjunctions, I am sure that everyone will write very brilliant sentences and get their desired score. And yes, why don't you take up a challenge of writing sentences with subordinating conjunctions in the comment box? We would love to see your sentences, and if you wish us to give you more information about any of these sentence types, do feel free to comment below. Yes, and this is the technique that I was talking about. The simplest way to remember the subordinating conjunctions is on a white bus. I remember. Yeah, how do I remember this? On a white bus. Okay, so now let's see what this means. It is on a white bus. Oh, now this seems to be a very important shortcut for us. O stands for only if. N stands for now that, nonetheless, nevertheless. A stands for although, after, as. And W is for while, whereas, when, which, maybe whatever, wherever, whenever, all these clauses. Then H stands for how and however. I stands for in spite of, if, in case, in order that. T stands for though, that, till. E stands for even though, even if. B is for because and before. U is unless and until. Lastly, S signifies since and so. Wow, have you seen with one simple trick how many subordinating conjunctions have we learned? Brilliant. So this is the shortcut to learn the subordinating conjunctions, and once you remember the way to learn the subordinating conjunctions, I'm sure that all of you can form complex sentences much easily applying the shortcut that I'm going to discuss now. Okay, so there are two ways to write a complex sentence. What are they? Let's keep it very simple, guys. The first technique is dependent clause plus independent clause. As I told you, a complex sentence would essentially contain two things. What are they? A dependent clause and an independent clause. So what can be more logical than joining one dependent clause plus one independent clause together? That's it. The concept is as simple as that. However, there is a small thing to remember here, that whenever you write the dependent clause first, you need to insert a comma after that. So when you follow this formula, a comma is a must. So people, you have to remember this and you have to use it, else the comment from the examiner would be lack of punctuations. So we don't want to get that negative comment. We are going to insert a comma once we start writing a complex sentence with a dependent clause. Now let's look at an example. Although living in an apartment has a greater number of benefits, some people prefer to live in independent homes. Now the clause that has been highlighted in yellow, let's just repeat that. Although living in an apartment has a greater number of benefits, some people prefer to live in independent homes. Now the first clause is known as a dependent clause. So let's imagine that the second part of the sentence is not existent. Let's say that we stop the sentence with benefits. Okay, so although living in an apartment has a greater number of benefits. So now if we stop the sentence here, does this sentence have any meaning? No, the sentence has no meaning, right? Because it is incomplete, or in other words, it is a dependent clause. So I have to add an independent clause to complete the meaning. And what is the independent clause here? Some people prefer to live in independent homes. Now this sentence called some people prefer to live in independent homes is completely meaningful and independent on its own, right? It does not require any external sentence to complete it. So now this sentence along with a comma which separates or which joins and a dependent clause with an independent clause is known as a complex sentence. Now this is the first way. What is that? Dependent clause plus independent clause with a comma in the middle. Now the second way is just the opposite of it. Independent clause plus dependent clause. So all we are going to do is flip or maybe interchange the clauses, and here there is no need to insert a comma. Rather, if you insert a comma, then it would be an error. So you should not insert a comma if you start writing the complex sentence with an independent clause. So now let's see the sentence. Some people prefer to live in independent homes even if living in an apartment has a greater number of pros. Pros, nothing but advantages or merits. Now, in this sentence, if you can clearly see, the first part of the sentence is an independent one. Some people prefer to live in independent homes. So, till here, the sentence is an independent clause. Now, the subsequent part of the sentence, that is, even if living in an apartment has a greater number of pros, this clause is a dependent one because it cannot exist independently, right? There is no meaning for this sentence if it is written separately. Now, this is the second form of complex sentences. Now, in the IELTS exam, the students must show both the variations. Okay, so they must show their ability to write a dependent clause followed by an independent clause, and also independent clause followed by dependent clause. You need to show both the variations to achieve a band 7 or higher. Similarly, in your speaking, while framing a sentence, you can first start with an independent clause and continue, or maybe you can start with a dependent clause, just give a small pause and then continue with the independent clause. That shows that your grammatical range is brilliant. Now for the last part of the sentences, the last type of sentences I must say are compound complex sentences. As the name suggests, this sentence is a mixture, it's an amalgamation of a compound and a complex sentence. Simple, the formula is compound sentence plus complex sentence. So it is a sentence that has at least 2 independent clauses and at least 1 dependent clause. Simple, at least 2 independent clauses and at least 1 dependent clause. Now let's look at an example. Though he didn't prepare well, he wrote the exam and he got an A+. So now let's break the sentence into two. Though he didn't prepare well, he wrote his exam. Now, though he didn't prepare well is clearly a dependent clause, because if I write that separately, that sentence does not have any meaning. Now, let me add the second phrase, that is, he wrote his exam. Now, this is an independent clause. Okay, and next sentence, he got an A+. Even this is an independent clause. So, how did we form the sentence? We joined 2 independent clauses with 1 dependent clause, and that's the simplest way to remember a compound complex sentence formula. I hope you understood the various types of sentence structures along with shortcuts like fanboys and on a white bus, and I hope you also understood the way in which you have to make compound sentences, complex sentences, simple sentences and compound complex sentences. So this short video provided a clear insight into the sentence types. I hope that you will prepare well and you will comment on how you like the video. If at all you like the video, as always, do give it a huge thumbs up, share it with all your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned to worldofenglishexams.com for many such useful and interesting videos on the IELTS exam. Thank you so much. Until I see you with the next video, all the best and happy preparation.